Now, if we have a quick overview of this pharmaceutical market, the market is dominated by a small number of very large firms. The concentration, I'll say something more about concentration in a moment, but concentration has increased in the pharmaceutical market over the years. There is now a relatively small number of very large firms that supply the major proportion of the market. Now, around those, this is like sort of main companies and satellite companies, I suppose. There's quite a large number of smaller high-tech firms that successfully compete. These firms are quite often the firms that develop the new products, the new drugs, the new techniques for treatment and so on. And they successfully compete with the large companies. It is a case, by the way, that very often the large companies either buy out the small firm or they buy out the drug that they've developed. Now, this is a very high value-added industry. What that means is that the raw materials to produce the drugs are almost always very, very cheap. The raw material cost is almost irrelevant in the drugs business. The high value comes from the very expensive research and development, the very expensive testing, the very expensive clinical trials. That's the thing that adds the value to these things. And of course, for very obvious reasons, I hope people understand, this industry is very heavily regulated. And lastly, one of the very important specifics about this market, when you're looking at costs, you have to take into account that research and development takes a long time and is very expensive. Now, to go back to concentration, I said that a small number of very large firms dominate the market. This slide here indicates the position. In fact, this was a number of years ago, so concentration has actually increased since this particular table was constructed. But even this particular table, 10 firms control more than 45% of the global market. I think if we had, it's my guess, it is a guess because it's too early to get the numbers, my guess is that if we had the numbers for last year, we discovered that the 10 largest firms are now controlling more than 50% of the market. So what that means is that there's a small number of very, very powerful firms in this market. And they're the firms that are going to be the big competition threat to any new company. Now, if we look at the development cycle for a new drug, this takes a long time. Incidentally, it may be difficult for you to identify the bits on this particular slide because the graphic is fairly small. However, if you go to your workspace and click on the information links, you can get to the British Pharmaceutical Society's website, which includes all this detail. Right, to get back to the slide, it takes a long time to develop a drug. You see, from the initial discovery, which in this table says year 0, to actually full-scale manufacture is 12 or more years. It's also very expensive. The numbers at the bottom indicate something to do with the expense of this, 350 million. Again, this is out of date. This perhaps refers to numbers in around the year 2000, 2001. So then the cost of developing a new drug is considerably bigger than this. But whatever the numbers are, what you should take from this table is that research and development is very expensive, very lengthy, and it has lots of problems. What normally happens, if you look at this table, is that there's a patent application perhaps in year 1. But you've got maybe 10 or 11 years where you've got patent protection, but you're not selling anything. So a significant amount of patent protection is, so to speak, wasted in the development cycle. Wasted in the sense that it doesn't protect you when you're selling the drug. And again, that's one of the specifics to do with the pharmaceutical industry, which when you look at theory, you must modify theory in the light of what actually specific things happen in this industry.